My name is Emma, I'm 29 years old, and 6 months ago, my digital art business was just barely managing to cover expenses. During a recent family dinner, my brother Mark looked around the table and dismissed my career as a joke. The most painful part was when my father nodded in agreement, saying, "She's always been a failure." I'll never forget the sting of humiliation as I sat there, holding back tears. What they didn't realize was that their harsh words would become the fuel for my global success. But before I explain how I turned their mockery into motivation, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever been underestimated in your ambitions. Growing up in a suburban town in Connecticut, I was always the creative one. Some of my earliest memories involve clutching colored pencils and filling sketchbooks with drawings that my elementary school teachers admired. My bedroom walls became galleries of imagination, showcasing landscapes, portraits, and abstract works that revealed my evolving style. By the time I reached middle school, I was winning local art contests. However, in my family, these accomplishments were often met with polite nods rather than enthusiasm. My father, Richard, defined himself through his success as an investment banker. Tall and always impeccably dressed in tailored suits, he viewed the world through the lens of financial stability and traditional success. To him, achievement meant attending prestigious universities, landing high-paying jobs, and maintaining a respectable family life. My mother, Nancy, once dreamed of becoming a novelist, but set those hopes aside to raise us. Occasionally, I'd catch her writing in a journal, quickly closing it when someone entered. Her abandoned passions silently warned me about the impracticality of creative careers. My older brother, Mark, was my father's exact replica, captain of the debate team, Ivy League business school graduate, and rapidly advancing at a top financial firm. Family conversations often centered on his promotions, investments, and successes. He was the golden child, flawless in our parents' eyes, and the benchmark against which I was constantly compared and found lacking. My younger sister, Kim, still in college, skillfully balanced meeting our parents' expectations by majoring in economics while pursuing photography as a minor. She was the family diplomat, avoiding conflict, unlike me. In our home, art was tolerated as a pleasant pastime, but never regarded as a serious career. When I announced my plan to attend art school instead of following a business path like Mark, the dinner table fell silent. My father reluctantly agreed to pay my tuition, but reminded me often that this was an investment with uncertain returns. Each semester, he would review my classes with barely concealed disappointment. Experimental digital media, how would that help me support myself? Family gatherings became exercises in sidestepping my achievements. Aunt Marjorie would politely ask, "How's your art going, dear?" Only for my father to cut in with, "She's still figuring things out." "Mark, tell everyone about your new client portfolio." My successes, winning student exhibitions, having my work displayed in local galleries, were dismissed as mere hobbies, not professional milestones. After graduating, I converted the second bedroom of my modest apartment into a digital art studio. My setup wasn't extravagant. A refurbished desktop with a decent graphics card, a drawing tablet I saved for 6 months to afford, and walls covered with inspiration and project schedules. I worked harder than ever, often putting in 70-hour weeks, balancing a part-time barista job while building my portfolio. Gradually, small victories emerged. My Instagram audience grew from friends and family to a modest following of 5,000. A local boutique commissioned me to design their seasonal catalog. A small tech startup hired me to develop their brand identity. These weren't large sums, but they represented real progress, proof that my chosen path could lead somewhere. Financially, however, I was still struggling. After rent, student loans, and equipment upgrades, I barely broke even each month, walking a tightrope. Meanwhile, Mark bought a luxury condo in the city, and my parents never missed a chance to remind me how secure his life was at this age. Despite this, I felt I was gaining momentum. The boutique owner referred me to other clients. My latest Instagram posts attracted more engagement than ever, and a promising online retailer expressed interest in an ongoing partnership that could provide steady income. For the first time, I had concrete successes to share, a chance to finally earn their respect and show that my path was not a mere detour, but a legitimate career. On the drive to my parents' house for our monthly family dinner, I rehearsed how I would share my news, hoping this time would be different. I wanted them to see that my persistence was paying off, that art was my profession and passion, and that success doesn't always come with a business suit or a corner office. I didn't realize this dinner would mark both my lowest point and the unexpected turning point that followed. That April evening was unusually warm as I arrived at my parents' home, carefully balancing the homemade tiramisu I'd spent the morning preparing. Their Tudor-style house stood grand as ever, with manicured gardens framing the entrance and my mother's prized roses just starting to bloom. I took a deep breath, mentally practicing a casual way to mention my recent achievements without sounding like I was seeking approval. Just then, my mother, Nancy, opened the door before I could knock, greeting me with a warm embrace and the familiar scent of her perfume. "Everyone's already here," she said. Mark had brought a bottle of champagne to celebrate his latest promotion, of course. I smiled and followed her inside the familiar hallway lined with family photos, mostly highlighting Mark's accomplishments. My graduation photo was tucked away between his football trophies and academic awards. The dining room gleamed with the formal setting reserved for these monthly dinners, complete with grandmother's china. Sterling silver flat-ear crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier as my father and Mark stood by the fireplace, deep in discussion about market trends, both dressed in button-down shirts despite the casual family gathering. Kimberly was setting the table, offering me a sympathetic smile as I entered. Mark announced loudly, raising his whiskey in a mock salute. "How's the starving artist lifestyle treating you, sis?" I ignored the jab and presented the dessert I had brought. "Wonderful," my mother said, taking the tiramisu. "Richard, pour Alison some wine. Dinner's almost ready." The conversation stayed on the surface at first, neighborhood gossip, Kimberly's upcoming finals, and the unusual weather. I waited for my chance to speak, allowing myself a moment to relax. As we moved to the dining table and my mother served her pot roast, my father's favorite dish, Mark dominated the discussion, sharing news of his recent promotion as the youngest senior financial analyst in the firm's history. He proudly announced, "They're putting me in charge of the Peterson account, a 7-figure portfolio." My father beamed, clapping Mark on the shoulder. "That's my boy," he said, raising his glass. Carrying on the Harrison family tradition of excellence. Everyone raised their glasses in response. Seizing the brief pause, I gathered my courage. "I actually have some exciting news too," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "Remember that online retailer I mentioned last time? They want to partner with me regularly. It could mean stable income and much wider exposure for my work." My mother nodded vaguely. "That's nice, dear." "Kimberly, how are your economics classes going this semester?" I pressed on, pulling out my phone. "I also just finished a commission for a boutique, expanding to 3 locations. They want me to design all their branding materials." I slid the phone across the table toward my father, who glanced briefly before passing it along. "My Instagram following has nearly doubled in the last 2 months too. One of my posts was even shared by that design blog I've followed for years." Mark chuckled, the sound cutting through the awkward silence. "Still doodling on your computer and calling it a career? That's cute, Al." "It's not doodling," I said, feeling my cheeks flush. "Digital art is a legitimate field with real commercial applications. These are paying clients. How much? My father asked sharply. The question felt like a slap. I'm building something, I replied defensively. These things take time. Too bad it's not enough to cover your rent without waiting. Tables, Mark interrupted. Meanwhile, my quarterly bonus is more than you'll make all year. Not everything is about money, I countered, though in our family we all knew it really was. Mark set down his fork and locked eyes with everyone at the table before settling on me. Let's be honest, your career is a joke compared to real jobs. You're almost 30, sharing an apartment and playing with Photoshop while calling yourself a professional. It's time to grow up. The table fell silent. I waited, hoping someone would defend me. My mother stared at her plate. Kimberly looked out the window. Then came the worst blow of all. My father sighed heavily and set down his glass. She's always been chasing fantasies. Some people just aren't cut out for success. Not everyone has what it takes to make it in the real world. His words hit me like physical blows. My chest tightened, making it hard to breathe. My hands shook under the table as I clenched them into fists, trying to stay composed. I have clients, I managed to say quietly. Real businesses that value my work. Hobby businesses run by your friends don't count, Mark scoffed. Dad's right. You need to face reality. My phone buzzed, offering a welcome escape. Excuse me, I mumbled, standing on unsteady legs. I need to take this. No one was calling, but I locked myself in the powder room and pressed. My palms against the cool marble vanity as silent tears streamed down my face. Through the door, I could hear the conversation continuing uninterrupted. Mark discussing his new car, my mother asking if he was seeing anyone special. I splashed cold water on my face, reapplied minimal makeup, and practiced a neutral expression in the mirror. After 10 minutes, I returned with a made-up story about a client emergency requiring me to leave early on a Saturday night. My father looked skeptical. Creative industries don't operate on banking hours, he said. I gathered my things. My mother frowned. You haven't had dessert. I'm not hungry anymore, I said, kissing her cheek mechanically. Congratulations again, Mark. See you next month. No one tried hard to convince me to stay. As I closed the front door behind me, I heard my father's voice. That's the problem with her generation. No commitment, no resilience. If only he knew how much resilience it took just to start my car, instead of collapsing in grief right there in their driveway. Rain had started by the time I left the neighborhood, matching my mood as I navigated familiar streets. Tears blurred my vision until I had to pull over at a deserted park overlook. I shut off the engine and let the emotions overtake me, releasing deep, heaving sobs from a wounded place I hadn't known existed. She's always been chasing fantasies. Your career is a joke. Some people just aren't cut out for success. The words replayed on a loop, each repetition cutting deeper. The worst part wasn't just what they said. It was the casual cruelty with which my own family dismissed. Years of hard work, dedication and passion. It was the painful realization that they never truly believed in me. They'd been waiting for me to fail all along. At midnight, I called Rachel, my closest friend from art school, who now worked in marketing for a tech company. They're wrong about you, Emma, she insisted after I told her about the evening, through hiccuping sobs. Your work is incredible. You just haven't found the right audience yet. Maybe they're right, I whispered. Maybe I'm deluding myself. I'm almost 30 and barely making rent. Van Gogh sold one painting in his lifetime, Rachel reminded me. Success in creative fields isn't linear like Mark's finance career. It's exponential. Nothing happens until... Suddenly everything seemed to move at once. I wanted to believe Rachel's words, but doubt had firmly taken root. Back in my apartment, I opened my laptop and checked my bank account. $843.27 in checking, $1,274 in savings, the total of my financial security, barely enough to cover 2 months' rent. I scrolled through recent client emails, searching for reassurance, but only finding small projects with modest pay. What if my family was right? What if I was simply postponing inevitable failure? The sensible choice would be to update my resume, apply for corporate design jobs, and join the many creative souls who surrender their dreams for stability. Sleep escaped me. At 2 a.m., I pulled out old college portfolios, revisiting projects that had won awards and professors' praise for my unique perspective and technical skill. I rediscovered the passion and conviction that had once burned so brightly before years of financial struggle and family doubt had dulled it. Something inside me shifted as the night deepened. The pain began to transform into something harder, more determined. If I was going to fail, I decided, it would be on my own terms, spectacularly, not by quietly yielding to their expectations. By 3 a.m., a strange calm had settled over me, replacing my earlier anguish. I opened a new document and began typing, with feverish intensity. Not a resignation letter, but a business plan. Not an admission of defeat, but a declaration of war. I outlined every weakness in my current approach: inconsistent social media presence, underpricing my work, targeting small clients, neglecting industry connections, and lacking a distinctive style that would make my work instantly recognizable. Until sunrise, I researched successful digital artists, studying their career paths, business models, and positioning. I analyzed their client bases, pricing strategies and marketing tactics, creating spreadsheets comparing their follower growth to mine, searching for patterns and opportunities. By morning, I had a detailed 90-day plan with clear financial goals, content calendars, outreach strategies, and skill development targets. I promised myself 3 months of absolute focus, not just to prove my family wrong, but to prove myself right. As dawn broke, my phone buzzed. A message from Kimberly. "You okay?" They shouldn't have said that. I stared at her words for a moment before replying with quiet determination, "I'm going to prove them wrong." The phrase felt different typed out. Not just an emotional reaction, but a genuine commitment. Something fundamental had shifted during those dark hours. The dinner meant to break me had instead solidified my resolve. I'd been playing at being a professional artist. Now I was ready to become one. I showered, changed, and made coffee, feeling oddly energized despite the sleepless night. The hurt remained a dull ache beneath my chest, but no longer controlled me. Instead, it fueled me. Every dismissive word, skeptical glance, and backhanded compliment became kindling for the fire I was about to ignite. They thought my career was a joke? Fine. I would make sure the punchline landed squarely on their side. The Monday after that disastrous family dinner, I made 2 important calls. The first was to Margaret Wilson, my former art professor, who had left academia to run a successful digital art gallery. The second was to a bank, where I applied for a small business loan, the kind of financial risk my father would have discouraged. "Bring your portfolio and business plan tomorrow morning," Margaret said, her tone sharp but encouraging. "And Alison, be ready for honesty. No sugarcoating." Margaret's gallery was in a renovated industrial space downtown, minimalist. White walls displaying digital art installations valued at thousands of dollars by collectors and commercial clients. Her office reflected her practical approach to creative business. Organized, efficient, with art alongside business awards. "Your technical skills are excellent," she said, scrolling through my portfolio. "But your presentation is amateurish. You're positioning yourself as a hobbyist, not a professional." For 2 hours, she systematically dismantled my approach. My prices were embarrassingly low. My website, built on generic templates, screamed unprofessional. I was targeting small clients when I should be aiming for larger opportunities. "You're selling yourself as a service provider," she explained, "when you should be a creative partner. Commercial clients don't want someone who just takes orders. They want vision, perspective, and a distinctive style. They're not buying your time. They're buying your unique creative voice." I left with a notebook full of actionable advice and Margaret's promise to introduce me to gallery owners and commercial art directors, if I implemented her suggestions. That same week, the bank approved my $15,000 loan. My father would have been horrified by the interest rate, but I saw it as capital for growth, not debt. I immediately upgraded my equipment, purchased industry-standard software, and rented a small studio space in a downtown artist collective. My apartment became purely residential. My new studio was command central for Operation Reinvention. 1 wall was covered with a massive calendar tracking daily, weekly, and monthly goals. Another displayed competitive analyses of successful artists in my niche. A third held mood boards for my developing signature style. I cut expenses to the bone. No takeout, no streaming services, no new clothes. Every dollar went toward building my business. 16-hour days became routine, researching industry trends before dawn, creating portfolio pieces until noon, client work until evening, administrative tasks until midnight. With Rachel's marketing expertise, I developed an aggressive social media strategy. You need to triple your content output while improving quality, she advised during one session. Consistency builds an audience, but distinctiveness keeps them engaged. My previous posts had performed best when they highlighted elements that truly resonated with viewers. A clear pattern emerged. My work that combined traditional artistic techniques with digital innovation received the most engagement. I honed this direction, developing a recognizable style where classical composition principles met cutting-edge digital execution. The first small breakthrough came when Design Forward, a popular industry blog, featured my rebranded portfolio in their Emerging Talent section. Alison Harrison bridges the digital-traditional divide with work that feels simultaneously timeless and contemporary, they wrote. The feature generated modest traffic to my website and added several hundred followers to my Instagram. Rejection, however, remained a constant companion. For every potential client who expressed interest, 5 others declined. Countless emails went unanswered. I created a rejection wall in my studio, printing each no thanks email as motivation. Each one helped refine my approach for the next opportunity. Physical exhaustion became my new normal. I developed tension headaches from hours hunched over my tablet. My eyes burned from screen fatigue. I ignored these warning signs, pushing harder, working longer. One particularly grueling week, I slept at my studio for 3 consecutive nights, subsisting on protein bars and cold coffee. Margaret checked in regularly, offering brutally honest feedback on each portfolio update. Better, she'd say, but not distinctive enough yet. Or, the concept is strong, but the execution lacks refinement. Her standards seemed impossible to meet, which was exactly what I needed. Rachel forced me to adopt marketing tactics from her corporate playbook. You're not just an artist, you're a brand, she insisted, helping me craft an elevator pitch and teaching me to speak about my work with confidence rather than apologetic hesitation. Stop qualifying your statements, she scolded. During a practice session, don't say, I think this design might work for your brand. Say, this design elevates your brand through strategic visual storytelling. Confidence isn't arrogance when it's backed by skill. After 6 weeks of transformation, my Instagram following had grown from 5,000 to nearly 25,000. My revised portfolio attracted higher quality inquiries. Small but respectable commissions trickled in. Corporate identity packages for startups, editorial illustrations for online publications, animated graphics for small business websites. None were life-changing, but together they provided sustainable income while building my professional reputation. More importantly, each new project improved my portfolio, creating a virtuous cycle. Better work attracted better clients. Then came The email that would change everything. "Your portfolio was recommended by Margaret Wilson," it began. "I'm working with indie musician Eliza Monroe on her debut album release. Your aesthetic seems perfect for what we're envisioning. Available to discuss?" The sender was James Thornan, a music industry marketing director known for innovative album campaigns. Eliza Monroe was an emerging singer-songwriter generating serious industry buzz. This wasn't just another small commission. It was a chance for significant exposure. The initial video call terrified me. James and Eliza described their vision for artwork encompassing the album cover, merchandise, social media assets, and potential animation for lyric videos. The timeline was brutal. 2 weeks from concept to final delivery. "We're looking for something that captures Eliza's sound. Nostalgic but fresh, emotional but not sentimental," James explained. The old Alison would have hedged, worried about overpromising. The new Alison said simply, "Absolutely, when can I hear the music?" What followed was the most intense 2 weeks of my professional life. I immersed myself in Eliza's music, filling sketchbooks with visual interpretations of her lyrics. I created mood boards, color studies, typography explorations. I developed 3 distinct concept directions, each comprehensively visualized across all platforms. I slept maybe 4 hours a night, fueled by determination and deadline pressure. When my eyes could no longer focus, I set a 20-minute timer, napped on the studio couch, then returned to work. The project consumed me entirely. The night before the presentation, I refined every pixel, tested every animation, proofread every typographic element. My hands shook from caffeine and exhaustion as I assembled the final presentation. The video call with James and Eliza felt surreal. I presented each concept with professional confidence that masked my internal terror. When I finished, the silence stretched uncomfortably. "Wow," Eliza finally said. "These are all incredible, but the second concept, it's like you crawled inside my head and pulled out exactly what I couldn't articulate. This is better than I imagined." James nodded in agreement. "We're going with concept 2. No revisions needed. This is perfect as is." I maintained composure until the call ended, then collapsed onto my studio floor, crying from relief and triumph. The album artwork wasn't just approved. It was celebrated. This wasn't just a successful project, it was vindication. What I didn't know then was that this project would become the turning point, thrusting me from struggling artist to global success faster than I could have imagined. Eliza Monroe's album dropped 3 weeks after I delivered the final artwork. Initial industry response was positive, with music blogs praising both the sound and visual identity. My name appeared in the credits, resulting in a modest influx of new followers and several small commission inquiries. It felt like success, but not a breakthrough, until the algorithm intervened. A TikTok video of a teenager dancing to Eliza's lead single went viral, generating millions of views within days. Suddenly, an album that industry insiders had expected to perform well in niche markets was exploding into mainstream consciousness. As the music gained traction, my artwork appeared everywhere: streaming platforms, music blogs, reaction videos, fan art recreations. My Instagram following exploded. Overnight, from 25,000 to 100,000 in just 72 hours. My website crashed under the surge of traffic. My inbox flooded with messages from potential clients, fans, and industry professionals. The real game changer came when Eliza appeared on National Morning Today, a major television program with millions of viewers. The host held up the physical album, praising its distinctive artwork. "The visual identity is as compelling as the music," he remarked. "Who created this?" "Alison Harrison," Eliza answered without hesitation. "She's an incredible artist who perfectly captured the soul of this project. We were lucky to find her. My phone began buzzing incessantly as the segment aired. Rachel called, screaming incoherently with excitement. Margaret texted a characteristic understatement. Good exposure. Capitalize immediately. Artbeat magazine requested an interview for their digital edition, featuring my work in an article titled Visual Storytelling in Music: How Alison Harrison's Artwork Amplifies Eliza Munro's Breakout Album. The piece highlighted my design process, artistic influences, and distinctive style, bridging traditional and digital techniques. Harrison represents a new generation of commercial artists who refuse to sacrifice artistic integrity for marketability, instead finding innovative ways to deliver both. The writer concluded. The article was shared thousands of times across social platforms. Then came the email that truly changed everything. Dear Miss Harrison, I represent Velocity Athletic Wear's marketing department. We're developing a global campaign for our new performance line and believe your distinctive artistic approach would create significant brand differentiation in a crowded marketplace. Are you available to discuss a potential collaboration? Velocity was no small brand. A multinational athletic wear company with storefronts in 37 countries. Their campaigns appeared on billboards in major cities worldwide, in high-profile magazines, and across digital platforms, backed by 9-figure advertising budgets. The meeting occurred in their sleek corporate headquarters. I presented my portfolio to a marketing team of 15 executives. The old insecurity threatened briefly, but I channeled Rachel's coaching on projecting confidence. My work creates emotional connection through visual storytelling, I explained, walking them through my process. For Velocity, I envisioned a campaign capturing the transcendent moment when physical exertion transforms into artistic expression, where athletics and aesthetics converge. Their initial brief had suggested standard athletic imagery with graphic overlays. I proposed something more ambitious, a series where athletes in motion were transformed into artistic elements, their movements creating dynamic visual patterns unique to each sport. Traditional artistic techniques would blend with cutting-edge, digital execution, creating something simultaneously familiar and innovative. This is a significant departure from our previous campaigns, the marketing director noted. It's risky, I admitted. Less risky than looking like every other athletic brand, I countered. This approach offers genuine differentiation in a visually saturated marketplace. The room fell silent. I had either overstepped or impressed them. I couldn't tell which. We'll need comprehensive mock-ups before proceeding, the director finally said. Can you deliver concept visualizations for 3 sports within 2 weeks? I could, and did working around the clock. I created sample executions for running, basketball, and yoga that transformed athletic movement into distinctive artistic expressions. The mock-ups were accompanied by adaptations across platforms: billboards, magazine spreads, Instagram carousels, website animations. The presentation of these concepts led to a second meeting, this time including Velocity's CEO. After intense discussions about brand positioning and target demographics, they greenlit the concept with a 6-figure contract that required me to engage an attorney to negotiate terms. The agent Margaret recommended specialized in artist representation. They're lowballing you, she informed me after reviewing their offer. Your concept is the centerpiece of a multi-million-dollar global campaign. Your compensation should reflect that. The subsequent negotiation doubled my fee and included usage rights limitations that protected my creative ownership. The final contract included prominent artist credit on all campaign materials, unusual for commercial work at this scale. Production involved traveling to shoots in 3 countries, working with world-class photographers and elite athletes. I directed artistic elements of each session, then spent weeks in post-production transforming raw imagery into the artistic vision I'd presented. When the campaign launched simultaneously across 5 continents, seeing my work on massive scales was surreal. My artistic vision appeared on Times Square billboards, London bus shelters, Tokyo subway stations, and countless digital platforms. The campaign hashtag generated millions of engagements as people shared photographs of installations in their cities. My Instagram following surpassed 1 million. Commission requests poured in, requiring me to hire an assistant just to manage inquiries. Commercial clients who had previously ignored my portfolio now offered premium rates. Galleries that had declined my submissions extended exhibition invitations. Financial security arrived with stunning swiftness. The velocity payment alone exceeded my previous annual income several times over. Subsequent projects commanded rates I would have considered impossible months earlier. For the first time, I could choose projects based on creative interest rather than financial necessity. I moved from my modest apartment to a spacious loft. With separate living and studio areas, I upgraded equipment, hired just a convenient narrative where they'd erased the past, as if success was a reset button, wiping away all the brokenness. I listened quietly, the words washing over me like a distant echo. Their version of support felt hollow, a performance, staged to soothe their own guilt without truly facing the damage done. When the polite small talk finally died down, I took a slow breath and met my mother's eyes. "There's something I need to say," I began, my voice steady, but softer than I expected. "For years you dismissed my work. You doubted me openly and behind my back. You made me question my talent, my choices, my very worth." A sharp intake of breath came from my father. Brian shifted uncomfortably. Kimberly's expression tightened, but she stayed silent. "I'm here tonight not to reopen old wounds for the sake of pain," I continued, "but because healing can only happen through honesty. I don't need your validation anymore. That came from within. What I do need is respect. Respect for my career, for my dedication, and for the person I've become despite the odds." The room was still, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths, now finally spoken aloud. My mother swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. "We never wanted to hurt you, Alison. We just didn't understand. We were scared." Her admission caught me off guard. Fear. That explained some of it. Fear, disguised as doubt. "I get that now," I said. "And I want to move forward, but it has to be on new terms. I need you to acknowledge the past, not ignore it, to recognize my accomplishments as real and hard-earned, not luck or rebellion." My father nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "We're proud of you," he said simply, his voice cracking with emotion. Kimberly reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Brian's smile this time felt genuine, tentative but real. The rest of the evening unfolded with cautious warmth, tentative bridges slowly being built over the chasm of years. As I left their house that night, the cool air felt different, not bitter or cold, but crisp and full of possibility. The path ahead wouldn't be perfect, and old scars would take time to fade, but I had reclaimed my story, not as the daughter who needed saving, but as the artist who had fought, failed, risen and triumphed on her own terms. The circle was closing, not with a final act of approval, but with the quiet understanding that my success was no longer theirs to define. It was mine to own. She studied a particularly vivid piece, an abstract blend of rich earth tones and digital overlays, her eyes lingering longer than I expected. "This one," she said quietly, "it feels different. Like it's telling a story I didn't know you wanted to tell." I nodded, sensing the tentative bridge she was extending. It's about growth, how change can be both painful and beautiful. Something I think we've all experienced in different ways. She smiled, genuine but still cautious. I'm proud of you, Alison, more than I ever said before. The words were soft, but they carried weight. I accepted the acknowledgement, without needing to dissect its timing or sincerity. For the first time, the validation felt like a gift, not a necessity. Later that night, as the crowd thinned and the gallery lights dimmed, I stood alone with my work. The journey from those early rejections, the grueling all-nighters, the family fractures and the breakthrough moments had led me here. Success had many faces: public acclaim, financial stability, creative fulfillment. But the greatest was this: peace with myself. I was no longer defined by others' opinions or their silence. I was wholly, unapologetically me. Visual description: a digital rendering of a dining table where faceless figures sit in oppressive silence. One figure glows with barely contained creative energy. She asked quietly, "This is about that dinner, isn't it?" I nodded. Art transforms experience, even painful ones. She hesitated, then said, "I never told you. I used to write poetry mostly. Some short stories. Nothing published." "I know," I replied. "I found your journals once when I was 12. They were beautiful." She looked startled. "You never mentioned it. You always hid them when someone entered the room. It seemed like a secret you weren't ready to share." She gazed at my artwork, her expression complicated. "I regret not pursuing it. More than that, I regret discouraging you. Fear becomes a legacy we pass down without intending to." This unexpected vulnerability, the closest she had come to acknowledging her role in my struggle, felt like a small but significant breakthrough. Across the room, my father engaged the gallery owner in conversation about investment potential in emerging artists. Ever the businessman, he had accepted my success primarily in terms he understood: financial viability and market positioning. Still, his presence represented a concession that my chosen path had validity, however he chose. To frame it, the most dramatic transformation had occurred with Brian, who approached carrying business cards. "These colleagues asked specifically for your contact information," he explained, slightly embarrassed. "Being your brother apparently makes me interesting by association." The role reversal wasn't lost on either of us. Him now leveraging our connection for professional advantage. But rather than satisfaction, I felt a complex empathy. Success had expanded my capacity for understanding, even those who had hurt me. Kimberly, now completing her photography degree against our parents' continued objections, displayed remarkable courage in forging her own path. She interned at my studio one day a week, developing her skills while completing her studies. Watching her navigate family dynamics with growing confidence was perhaps my most meaningful accomplishment. The year following my breakthrough brought extraordinary professional development. My studio now employed 5 people, 2 digital artists, an administrative assistant, a project manager, and a social media coordinator. We occupied a renovated warehouse with separate areas for commercial work, personal projects, and client meetings. High-profile campaigns established my reputation. Across industries, museums commissioned interactive installations, tech companies sought my aesthetic for product launches. A prestigious publisher contracted a book showcasing my artistic process and commercial work. Financial security was no longer a concern, but a reality that allowed creative freedom and selective client choice. I maintained the discipline and work ethic that fueled my breakthrough while establishing healthier boundaries around rest and personal time. Beyond professional accomplishment, I discovered a deeper understanding of success itself. External validation, once desperately sought, proved hollow compared to internal measures. creative integrity, authentic expression, meaningful impact. The most profound lesson emerged through mentoring younger artists facing similar family resistance. Recognizing my painful experience could benefit others, I established a scholarship program for art students from unsupportive backgrounds, providing not just financial assistance, but professional guidance and emotional support. As the exhibition opening concluded, I gathered my team for a celebratory dinner, inviting my family to join, a symbolic bridging of worlds once kept rigidly separate. The conversation remained somewhat stilted, but genuine effort prevailed on all sides. Watching my mother engage my project manager about creative process, while my father discussed business structure with my administrative director, represented small but meaningful progress. Later, alone in my studio reflecting on the exhibition's success, I recognized how completely my perspective had transformed. The family approval once desperately sought now held diminished importance compared to self-validation and peer recognition. The creative path, once defensive and uncertain, had become confidently self-directed. The painful dismissal at that. April dinner had catalyzed not just a professional breakthrough, but personal liberation, freedom from external definition and familial constraint. The wound had healed into wisdom, rejection into resilience. Success wasn't revenge, but revelation, showing both my family and myself what had always been possible when talent aligned with determination. If you're watching this and facing similar dismissal of your creative ambitions, remember this: others' limited perspectives don't define your potential. Your path may require more determination without family support, but authentic success remains possible. Perhaps even more meaningful for being self-validated rather than externally approved. The journey from humiliation to triumph taught me this: creativity combined with persistence can indeed become a viable career, despite what skeptics and traditional thinkers might claim. Sometimes the voices telling you something is impossible are simply telling you about their limitations, not yours. What dreams are you pursuing despite others' doubts? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the like button. Your support helps these stories reach others facing similar challenges. Remember, never stop creating your own path to success.